This is another one that falls into the NFL is cheap category. And this one really bothers me as a former lawyer. I think back to, it was either 2011, 2012, when we were doing PFT Live as a streaming show at noon Eastern through NBCsports.com. I remember addressing a situation involving a fan at a baseball game who fell over a railing while trying to catch a home run or a foul ball or whatever and died. And again, as a former lawyer, one of the things you learn to do as a lawyer, and people like to complain about lawyers, but the efforts of lawyers to hold accountable those who would be cheap or negligent or reckless or irresponsible, to hold them accountable by taking action when that quality of not being willing to spend the money or not thinking about how to properly take care of people when you have a duty to take care of them, when that manifests itself in someone getting injured or killed and litigation ensues, smart companies, responsible companies will see that as a wake-up call, and they'll do what they have to do to eliminate that hazard moving forward. They'll spend the money and they'll complain about the lawyers, but at the end of the day, if you're keeping people from getting injured or killed, an admirable reaction to the situation. I raise that because something happened at the Dolphins Patriots game on Sunday night. Police are investigating. There are reports suggesting that the 53-year-old man who had a medical event and was pronounced dead at a local hospital had been beaten up. There was a segment last night on NBC Nightly News, and the package had video of various fights, because we're all Big Brother. We've established that. Everybody's carrying around the phone that allows us to capture whatever's happening, and that's good, because otherwise you'd have no way of knowing, unless there's a security camera somewhere that catches it with that grainy black and white useless image. You know, these great cameras on here, high def, full color, you see exactly what happened. And my point is this, because the NFL had a statement that went something like, millions of fans go to games every week, or more than 1 million fans, something like that. It is a lot of fans. You figure there are 32 teams. If you got 16 stadiums with, 60, 70,000 in them each, I'll give you I'll round it up to 1 million. It's more than 1 million on most occasions. And it's a handful who harm the experience of other fans or something like that. A handful make the experience less enjoyable for other fans. Well, it's more than a handful that make it less enjoyable. Regardless of any physical altercations, there are a lot of assholes at these games, and they think it's their birthright to buy a bunch of booze, to get themselves fired up and loud and hostile. And God forbid, if you spot someone rooting for the wrong team and the game isn't going well, maybe you're losing some money on it, whatever. Those various factors combine into what can be a very toxic mess. So, and this gets back to how the law does, or at least should, affect these situations. You've got a concept under the law of an invitee. And there are 3 categories that relate to people who are on somebody else's land. Here, we're going to slip back into another CLE exercise. 3 categories: trespasser, licensee, or invitee. Trespasser is somebody who's on your property that has no business whatsoever being there. They are owed the lowest standard of care by the owner of the property. They shouldn't be there. Licensee is somebody who's allowed to be there, but you're not benefiting from it as the owner of the property, right? You're allowing someone to be on your land for whatever reason, but you're not getting paid. You don't have any specific interest. You're just being nice. You have a standard that's higher than the standard that applies to a trespasser. Then there's the invitee. This is the customer. This is the person who goes to the grocery store and slips and falls on a banana peel and gets injured. There's a higher obligation. If there's a banana peel on the floor, it's incumbent on management to spot it and get it picked up. And if you don't, you're responsible for the ensuing injury. So I mention that because who are the people who come to NFL stadiums? They are invitees. And I'd hate to think that we've reached a point in our society where going to an NFL game is akin to going whitewater rafting or skiing down a black diamond slope, where there's a certain amount of risk that you assume that involves whether or not you're going to live to tell about. I think the idea that if you go to an NFL game, you take your life into your own hands is probably not where we should be. So it comes back to how much money is going to be devoted by the stadium owner / operator to protect the people who are there. And if somebody's getting punched and killed in your stadium, you probably need to have a little better security. And the argument will be, well, we're not responsible for the criminal acts of third parties. And that comes up all the time when you're talking about civil liability. But when you are the property owner and you have business invitees who are coming in to benefit you, to give you money, to be on your property, and you know, because you're selling beer and other alcoholic beverages are available based upon club seats and this, that, and the other thing, you understand, or you should understand, that there's an obligation to ensure a higher degree of safety and security. Now, what does it take? I don't know, more than what they had at Gillette Stadium. Anytime one of these things happen, what does it take? More, because there should be intervention before the punch is thrown. I don't know the answer to this, but my point is, when these things happen, the team is responsible. The owner and operator of the stadium is responsible, because whatever you're doing isn't enough to keep someone from getting punched in the head and possibly killed by someone else. So this is one of the reasons why you shouldn't be surprised if in the future stadiums are smaller. The upper deck, because I think this was a 300 level upper deck incident at Gillette Stadium. And when I was at Acrisure Stadium, I guess I should start calling it by the right name, because that's what it is. When I was there for 5 hours, 6 hours on Monday night, and I kept seeing Acrisure Stadium, it kind of wiped the Heinz Field out of my brain. But you look up, because I had a moment where, you know, we had pretty good accommodations at the game. And I, as Chris and I joke from time to time, can't hide money in the Mike McDaniel PS to that, not trying to. But I looked up and I remembered the last time I was in that stadium, because it was for the 2004 AFC Championship game. And it was me and a few family members way up, and I'm looking, it's like way up. And you start looking around that up, and it's like a different country. It's like a different area code. I won't be surprised if some teams, for the next iteration of their stadiums, just peel that upper layer off, because they're not making as much profit per person from the upper layer as they do from the lower. And if it's creating these fights, these liability issues, why do it? Why have it? You don't need to have it. Your stadium's sold out. The blackout rule's dead anyway. All the money's coming from TV. The bulk of the money's coming from TV, as evidenced by the flexing on Thursday and Monday nights now. So I guess my point is this. Any injury is one injury too many at these games. Obviously, any death is one death too many at these games. And if people are getting injured by fights, it's incumbent on the owners and operators of the stadiums to find a way to intervene before it gets to that point. Period. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.